Hey y'all, welcome back to the Fallout Show recap slash breakdown video. Today we're doing episode 3, which is one of the shorter episodes of the series. Not a whole lot of Easter eggs or references to the game in this one compared to the first two. This is mostly a story development episode, just to push the narrative a little further, develop some relationships between our main characters. So this one may not take as long to go through, but I'm going to point out key points of the episode, and of course any Easter eggs that I noticed throughout it. So the episode opens with Cooper filming for one of his famous movies, The Man from Dead Horse. This is a scene where he is facing off against the primary antagonist and is supposed to be delivering justice. However, after a long beat of tense silence, he stops, interrupts the filming, and protests having to kill this criminal. Given his character's morals, he should not be killing this man, but rather arresting him. They obviously start with this scene intentionally to set the vibe, the general message of this episode, which is that you can have mercy even in a very cruel, violent world such as the Wasteland. And specifically, Cooper is inherently a good person, but has been pushed to about as much as a human can be, and he has every reason to be as aggressive and evil, really, as he has been. So after the filming, Cooper is seen talking with I believe it's the director of his movie. I don't know if it's a director or if it's a producer, it's just somebody that he works with on set, talking about another employee, Bob, who had been fired for being a communist. Now, what we learn later on in the series is when they say communist, they mean anti-Vault-Tec. We don't really get that as first-time watchers of this episode. We just hear communist and assume that he's a dirty, filthy red. Then it switches to a cute little scene of Cooper pretending to not know his wife. They're adorable with each other, and then the daughter shows up. But she quickly turns things around and provides Cooper with his new costume for the next filming gig that she has landed for him. It's obvious how nervous she is handing the vault suit to him, and we don't even see the suit right away. She just says that they made it in his colors, which his cowboy colors, his iconic character wears the blue and yellow. I thought that was a great way to tie in the colors of the vault suit to Cooper. I don't think I could actually see a Western movie with colors like this, but I think it's a very smart and clever way to tie in those colors, further pushing the Vault Boy character as a representation of Cooper. That scene ends and we are taken back to the present with Cooper looking for the target. As he's looking at Wildsick's headless body, he starts to cough. And we have not seen him act like this so far in the series. This is the first time that we see him cough like this. And then he immediately pulls out his bag, takes out one of the little vials, and inhales it. No explanation of what that's for. That doesn't come until the episode after. But this is where the lore changes are also starting for the ghouls. Well, continuing, because they've already changed some things about the ghouls. But this is a completely new lore that has never been a thing in the games. Back to Lucy, traveling on her own with Wildsick's head. We get a lot of amazing scenery shots. One thing Amazon has is money, and that is very evident in their backgrounds. I have not seen CGI backgrounds like this look this good in a TV show, probably since Game of Thrones, and maybe I just haven't watched enough TV, but this is like movie level quality. Loved the cameo of the Yum Yum deviled eggs. I never really thought of how those were packaged playing the game, and it never really occurred to me just how bulky of a food deviled eggs are to carry around with you. I think she had like 6. There's only 6 of these deviled eggs to a package, and the box is pretty big. So I think it's one of the most impractical food items in the games now that I'm seeing it in what it would look like in real life. I guess it's a good source of protein, but so is rad roach meat, you know? We see another lore change when Lucy pulls out the tracker from her Pip-Boy and shoves it up Wildsick's nose. This is definitely not something that we've ever seen in the games. The Pip-Boys have never had trackers like this, or even any removable parts that we know of. She just pulled it out. It's wireless. You know, I think it makes sense. I think they did a good job of creating this technology for the series, but if that were something from the games, it would come in real handy. So we're back to Max and his messed up power armor, which was sabotaged by the ghoul Cooper in the last episode. He pulls out a little fuse, realizes that's what's broken, and then stupidly leaves his power armor to go get it fixed. But not before he gets a call from the Brotherhood which he answers and just completely botches the entire communication. I did like getting to see the Brotherhood's communication room during this scene, with the big map of the California coast. I was hoping to see some locations marked out. I think it would have been cool to see them mention some other cities from the first two games, like New Reno or Gecko, or any of those major cities from the games. But it's just a map. Still, it's cool to see. Max completely botches that conversation and then abandons his power armor to go get the fuse fixed. Really stupid move on his part. It was cool getting to see this voice modification that the repair person uses, which he's talking to.
I can fix it. Cost you 5 caps.
I don't know if you would consider this. I don't think she's a synth. I think she just has a biotech modification, kind of like Cyberpunk. She could be a synth. Who knows? It's still cool technology to see, and I love how it made her voice sound. Also, she barely charged anything to fix that. 5 caps? It's a lot more expensive in the games to get things repaired, especially if they're completely broken. I think caps are worth more in this show than they are in the games, given how much things cost. Now, I understand that the junk jet did have the same price, but the fact that Max selling his tooth only got him 1 or 2 caps, I feel like he should have gotten more of that, given how valuable human teeth are in this world. I thought it was hilarious that he uses a toilet seat during his fight with the scavengers who were taking over his power armor, to kill them, or to beat them. He cannot seem to escape toilet seats, even when it comes to combat. And that head-crushing death on one of those scavengers was absolutely awesome. I would love to see that used as maybe a finishing move in VATS whenever you're using unarmed in power armor. I think that'd be really cool, especially if you use a critical attack to just reach out and squish their head. So then we get Thaddeus as Max's new squire, which he did not want, but they gave him anyway. Obviously, it's a hilarious decision that he gets assigned as the squire. The irony is everywhere. And Max immediately recognizes the opportunity to have some fun with him and get some revenge on him. However, I thought that the scene of him sparing Thaddeus, when he's down on his knees and sees what's happened to the other guy who just got his head crushed, the fact that Max spares him reminds me a lot of Cooper at the very beginning of the episode sparing the villain in his movie. I'm sure that was done intentionally, and I think it's a great parallel. But he immediately starts scheming for ways to torture Thaddeus to get back at him for everything that he's done. Back to Lucy, traveling with the head, she comes upon this flooded city, which I think might be some sort of Sunset Sarsaparilla factory. I'm not sure, because we see the ad on the car at the very beginning, and then when it pans out to the wide shot, we also see a New Vegas loading screen image, like partially the one that there's a new sheriff in town. That whole area seems to be very New Vegas feeling. I also love the quick scene of Lucy checking the location of where she's supposed to be going on her Pip-Boy, and she does switch from the local map to the world map. I loved seeing that. And then there's the deer. The deer scene was kind of weird. Obviously, it's very symbolic. The deer represents her innocence, which is quickly ripped away from her violently and suddenly, without warning. But I think it's weird that it's an unmutated deer. Again, I guess not all animals have to be mutated, but the only deer that we've seen in the games is the rad stags, which are 2-headed. I just thought that was interesting, seeing an unmutated deer. Rest in peace, by the way, Bambi. And just as Lucy's about to go and chase after the head, Cooper arrives and begins to use her as bait. And I think that the stuff that he sees on the ground to identify a Gulper is its poop, or it's either that or it's some sort of egg location, like egg sac. But I think it's more likely solid waste from said Gulper. So then we're taken back to the vault to see how the leaders, the council of the vault, is handling Norm and Chet disobeying direct orders and letting Lucy escape. Chet is demoted from his beloved position of gatekeeper, which ruins him because he put his entire identity into that job. I did feel really bad for him in that moment. He does annoy me for the rest of the series because of how much of a wimp he is, but I did feel bad for him because that's all he knew. Norm, on the other hand, thinks that he has avoided any form of actual punishment because he does not care about anything he does in the vaults. However, then he is then assigned to take over feeding the captured prisoners, the raiders. I feel like they didn't think that through very well. I think Betty had too much faith in Norm's ethics, thinking that he would somehow make some sort of turnaround. Or maybe she was hoping that he would kill the prisoners so that she could fully punish him. I don't know what that would look like. if they caught him killing the prisoners. I don't know what a punishment for that would look like. But this is where we start the constant loop of Norm delivering food to the prisoners. Meanwhile, Max and Thaddeus are traveling, and Max is taking every opportunity to get Thad to do some stupid, pointless task, such as retrieving an apple out of a dead tree in the middle of a wasteland. And then Thaddeus pulls out a device that, once again, does not exist in the games and I wish did, which is some sort of radiation tracking device that, I don't know how it works, but it will locate the strongest source of radiation. I don't really know if that's a believable technology. Not that any of the technology in this world is believable. And then there's the obvious irony of Thaddeus being the one to mention that the Brotherhood's going to wipe out all abominations, including ghouls, knowing what happens to him later in the series. That is the Brotherhood's goal. So then we finally get to see this Gulper in its full beauty. Cooper is using Lucy as bait, and it works. So it's an axolotl. It's a mutated axolotl that has fingers inside of the mouth. Now, I remember seeing this in the trailer and seeing people discussing the uses of this kind of creature, knowing that axolotls regrow their limbs. I believe the theory was that they had started creating these mutated axolotls to regrow human limbs so that they can be used for prosthetics. Clearly they only got as far as growing fingers in the mouth before it all went wrong, and they're disgusting. I mean, it looks... CGI was great for it. Although the eyes are kind of weird. The eyes are a little too human. A little too... You know, it's like a golden doodle where it looks like there's a human trapped in there. That's kind of what it looks like. I honestly didn't remember that these creatures existed in the games, but they do. They came with the Far Harbor DLC, which I only played through entirely once. It was a great DLC. But I forgot completely that those existed. However, the Gulpers in the Fallout 4 Far Harbor DLC are not axolotls, they're actually salamanders. So I guess there's two types of Gulpers that exist, and this is the salamander, or this is the axolotl variant that we see in the show. How these two creatures can exist on opposite ends of the country with the same name, kind of weird, considering we know from later episodes in the show that the axolotl Gulpers were created in Vault 4 in California. Who created the salamander Gulpers and how'd they get the same name? I digress. Still a cool creature, and cool to see where it came from. So during the fight with the Gulper, Lucy grabs Cooper's bag and throws it into its mouth, which it chomps on a few times and then spits out. What she doesn't know is that there are the life-saving vitals inside of that bag that keep Cooper from turning feral. So he totally flips out and panics once he realizes they're broken and they have to completely change course, and he takes her as his effectively prisoner to get more vials. Back to Thaddeus and Max, they have a little heart-to-heart while they're out traveling, and he's replacing his water pouch, whatever he calls it. That whole conversation was pretty cute, but it gave me mad anxiety. However, I loved learning Thaddeus's lore and the fact that he came from a fly farm and he was a shitter, which is so funny. That his entire purpose up until joining the Brotherhood has been to eat food, poop, and then use the poop to feed flies. Bloat flies, I assume, which would then be sold as food. So you can understand why he has latched onto the Brotherhood as much as he has, because he's never really had any other purpose similar to Max. And yet, Thaddeus has continued the cycle of abuse by having Max beat up. I liked the power dynamic between Woody and Reg when in the vault they are all discussing what they're going to do with the prisoners. I like how they fight over saying the same thing. Meanwhile, Betty, the one who we know eventually does get elected as overseer, is saying nothing. She's really not participating at all, which just really goes to show how rigged the whole thing is. Woody and Reg are trying so hard to get the approval with the Vault Dwellers, and yet Betty's the one that ends up winning. And I think Norm probably noticed that, obviously, because he's a very perceptive guy. I thought it was very interesting that Stephanie Harper, who we know is from Vault 31, so that means that she is a Vault Tech employee who was cryogenically frozen and then revived later. Although we know that she's from there, she seems to want to fight back against the prisoners and go against the teachings of their vault. Not very management of her, right? So there's a big debate about her character and whether or not she is good or evil. Especially the fact that when she talks to Norm after the meeting, she tells him that he's right to want to kill the prisoners and that Norm's father would do the right thing. Assuming that by the right thing she means to kill the prisoners, does that mean that she also supported and bombing Shady Sands? That's kind of what it sounds like. It does make me wonder what Hank would do if he were there, what he would do to the prisoners. If he would kill them and show everybody that he is capable of killing, or would he pretend to release them? I don't know. Her character is very confusing, but I'm looking forward to learning about it in the next season. Also, absolutely loved the water chip reference during the meeting, especially the fact that the water chip that he's carrying is an exact one-for-one replica of the water chip from the first game. The only thing I wish they would have done is, he says they have about 2 months until the chip fails. I do wish they would have lined up that timer with the amount of time that you have in the game to find a new water chip, which is 150 days. If anything could be changed, it would be that they would make, he would say, oh, we probably have about 150 days until the water chip runs out. But either way, it was an awesome Easter egg. So Max and Thaddeus show up at the same flooded location that Lucy and Cooper found the Gulper. They wade straight into the water and are immediately attacked. And here is where Max ends the cycle of abuse. Instead of doing the same thing that Titus did to him and letting Thaddeus run without any armor or any adequate weapons at this abomination, he tells him to go back to shore, and he takes on the creature because he's the one in power armor. He says, I am a knight of the Brotherhood of Steel. He believes in it. He believes in honor. He is an honorable man. Bro has high karma, alright? Loved getting to see the harpoon gun, which Thaddeus uses to shoot the Gulper, which is another Far Harbor weapon. It looks a little different than the weapon in the game, but it functions the exact same. And then when Max is attempting to pull Thaddeus out of the Gulper's throat, in the scenes where it focuses on his face inside the power armor, you can always see the little gauges, you know, his health, his rad level, his fusion core level, and then his action points. The fusion core power and the action points, the needle on the dial is going crazy back and forth, meaning he's using a lot of stamina and a lot of power for his armor. So I thought that was a really cool little detail, a realistic detail. And in one of the final scenes, back to Coop and Lucy traveling together, Coop pulls out a flask of water and drinks it right in front of her, and then pours out the last few drops just to be a jerk. Obviously doesn't explain to her why he's not giving her the water, but she realizes it not long after when they pass by a puddle of water, which sets off the rad meter on her Pip-Boy. Cooper's clearly trying to teach her by experience what the wasteland is all about, what you can and can't do. I think she starts to realize that and appreciate it. Obviously, she's pissed at him in this moment because she doesn't have any water, but she realizes that he didn't give her water because he knew it would make her sick, and she needs to make that decision. She needs to make the decision to drink the irradiated water of the wasteland and taint herself. He's not going to do that for her, which I think is a merciful choice on his part. And she looks up at the billboard with the Vault Boy, and he promptly shoots a hole in the head of the billboard, which then pans into the very final scene of him coming out of his trailer, all suited up in the vault suit. And he's so naive in this scene, which is a parallel to Lucy's naivete and her origin from the vault. He fully believes, because he's not that bright, you know. His special stats, I think his intelligence is like 4. He's not a smart guy. At least he doesn't realize the kind of company that Vault-Tec is at this time. I think he's just out of the loop, and he says to all the Vault-Tec reps during the shoot that they're doing God's work, because he truly believes that they're an ethical company that's looking to save the people of America. Obviously, his wife already knows this. It's not true. And when he asks them jokingly if the vault suit protects from radiation, they obviously lie when they say that it does. They're just scumbags from the very start, and the poor guy doesn't realize it. So he goes through all the poses, he tries to find his thing. He's never done an advert before, he says, so he's a little awkward, but eventually he does land on the thumbs up. Again, we know now that he's taken this from his experience in the military. He doesn't do the exact pose that the Vault Boy does. He doesn't have it up in front of him like the Vault Boy. It's essentially the same thing. And I don't really know how the design choice came to take he poses like this, to take that and then put it up like this. Maybe he told them later on that that's what the thumbs up means, but it's a great ending to this episode, just getting to see he is what Vault-Tec represented, and he had no idea who they really were. And I just feel so bad for him. So that's about all there really was to see in this episode. Not a whole lot of Easter eggs or game references that we hadn't already seen. We repeat a lot of locations that we'd seen before, such as Philly, but still a good episode. Great character development, great story development, got a little bit of lore, and it sets them up real good for the next episode, which is another one of my favorites. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you as always. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, if you feel compelled. I'm still waiting on Fallout London. That's going to be my next thing after I do these recap videos. Hopefully by the time I'm done with these it'll be out, but if not, then we'll just figure it out from there. But I will see you guys in the next video for episode 4. Until then, peace out.